everyone, welcome to the channel. So today I want to talk about an update with the upcoming Masters of the Universe movie. This is going to be a live-action movie produced by Mattel, part of their toy-to-movie franchise ever since the success of Barbie. So Masters of the Universe was at its peak in the 80s, and it reached a point where it was actually selling better than Barbie, which is crazy. I'm pretty sure it was the only other Mattel product to do that. However, Masters of the Universe has had trouble finding its footing ever since then. Unlike properties like Star Wars or Star Trek or Barbie or so on and so forth, who have managed to stay relevant for decades and decades, He-Man's been there, he just hasn't managed to break into that mainstream success again. But Mattel keeps trying, and I think there's still a lot of potential for the franchise, and they're hoping this upcoming movie will revitalize the series. So apparently the actor who plays He-Man made some comments, and this article from Screen Rant is talking about it. But basically, it's saying that Masters of the Universe star teases more modern take on He-Man. So basically, they're trying to update the series to be for a more modern audience. He-Man had a live-action movie back in 1987, but unfortunately, it really fell flat, and fans of the franchise did not appreciate it. It had a lot of issues, and I'm just hoping that this movie will be able to at least outperform that one, but we'll have to wait and see. But really quick, before we get into the article, I wanted to talk about my graphic novel. It's a sci-fi action story called Shadow Paradox, and it's about a man who lives in a post-apocalyptic wasteland in a world that's been overrun by monsters. So he travels back in time to try to stop the apocalypse from happening in the first place. He ends up in a world that's very different from his own, a world of flying cars and giant buildings. Now he has to learn to navigate this world, find allies, and find answers to save the future. So if any of that sounds like it's up your alley, you should check it out. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks for hearing me out, and let's get into this article. The article starts with Nicholas Galitzine teases a more modern approach to He-Man in the new Masters of the Universe movie. The film is a live-action adaptation of the story first popularized by the Mattel toy line. It chronicles the story of He-Man, who in this version is a man on Earth, who discovers that he is actually an alien prince. So He-Man has gone through multiple iterations. It started out as a toy line, and it had comic books that came with the toys, and those told its own story, but then Filmation partnered with Mattel, and a lot of what became basically the idea of He-Man actually came from Filmation's team. Like, originally He-Man was not a prince, he was just a barbarian type character from a tribe of barbarians, but then Filmation made Prince Adam, and he had this secret identity, and in the Filmation version he is half human, because his mother was originally an astronaut from Earth, who happened to get stranded on an alien planet, and became their queen. But now it looks like they're revitalizing the franchise again, and telling their own story. So I guess in this case he's going to be like the average teenage boy who discovers that he's actually this long-lost alien prince, going the isekai route, which is really popular right now, but also a little Superman-y. A little like Superman. So it continues with Galitzine plays the main hero in the film, which is directed by Travis Knight. The cast is star-studded, featuring Jared Leto as Skeletor, along with co-stars Idris Elba, Moreno Baccarin, Kristen Wiig, Alison Brie, Camila Mendes, Sashir Zamata, and James Purefoy. Masters of the Universe is set for release on June 5th, 2026. So if I'm being honest, I'm surprised Jared Leto still has a career. He's famously very difficult to work with, being an extreme method actor. So basically, take Morbius for example, and that character has a lot of health issues, so like he needs crutches to walk. However, Jared Leto actually acted like he was disabled just on set regularly. Like it would take him 40 minutes just to use the restroom, because instead of walking there normally, he would use crutches and purposely go as slow as possible to encapsulate the character. And it got to a point where they decided to just have someone take him to the bathroom in a wheelchair, so that way he wouldn't put off filming. And he does this all the time with like every character that he plays. He also played the Joker in Suicide Squad, so he would purposely play these really mean tricks on his co-stars.
The other thing I wanted to talk to you about is Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
The
Joker.
Yeah.
He did some bad things, Jared Leto did. He gave some really horrific gifts. He had a henchman who would come into the rehearsal room, and the henchman came in with a dead pig and plopped it on the table. And then he walked out. And that was our introduction into Jared Leto.
And he also sent them really inappropriate gifts, including like adult material. It was really weird. And on top of all of that, he also has like a lot of criminal allegations. I kind of think of him in the same vein as like Ezra Miller or Jonathan Majors or someone like that. But for some reason, Hollywood is still working with him, despite the fact that, if I recall correctly, most of his recent films flopped, including Suicide Squad. In fact, for Suicide Squad, most of the Joker's content was cut from the final release. So he kind of did all that nonsense for nothing. I don't know, I just feel like eventually Hollywood's going to get wise to him and just drop him. It'd be interesting to see if he pulls anything while he's playing Skeletor, but still, I don't understand why they're still working with him. But I digress. Let's continue on. In an interview with Screen Rant's Titania Hollander for his upcoming film 100 Nights of Hero, Galatzine speaks on how Knight and the team have approached He-Man in the new Masters of the Universe movie. Galatzine did not venture into spoiler territory, but he did offer that there is a modernity to him that is really interesting. He also praised the script overall, saying that there's a really human story in there that acts as a nice complement to existing action and set pieces. And then they provide the full quote here, which I guess we can go through. So Screen Rant asked, "We recently spoke to Camila Mendez, who shared how excited she was for Masters of the Universe. What are you most excited for fans to see? And when might they get to see a sneak peek of it?" To which he responds, "Honestly, I knew when I got the script that it was very unlike the types of movies that kind of sit in its genre or bracket. There was something incredibly human about the story, and so humorous, which are two things that I really look for as an actor. Similar to this movie, 100 Nights of Hero, there was a humor and also emotionality. There's a little bit more action, I suppose, with He-Man, but I really am extremely excited for people to see this movie and to meet Adam." So I think he's being a little vague here, which I understand. You don't want to give away too much, but like, what does he mean by, emotionality or humor? Like, is it gonna be slapstick or punny? Like, for example, He-Man is known for having the character names be very on the nose. And like, is he talking about Adam's character arc, or, like, what's emotional about it? But I guess that would get into spoiler territory, so it is what it is. Without spoiling too much, I think there's a modernity to him that is really interesting. It feels like who he is as a person is a handshake between what traditional masculinity and femininity are, and I think it's very exciting to be able to play that in such a huge studio movie. But again, I think these statements are pretty vague. I don't know, I guess we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, the action and set pieces are incredible, but there's a really human story in there as well. I think if I'm going to do something with that level of spectacle, I have to have that as well. I mean, I think it makes sense to have action in an action franchise. I think it's good to have, action, but also heart. So I hope that that's what he's talking about here. So I hope that's what they're going for. So that was the quote, and then it goes on to say, Mattel is no stranger to bringing a toy line into the modern day. Specifically, they did this with Barbie in 2023. Like Masters of the Universe, the feminine doll had gotten plenty of animated specials and more, but had not gotten the 21st century live-action treatment Masters of the Universe did back in 1987, which they comment on here. I am a little surprised that Barbie did not get a live-action movie sooner, because she has like 40 animated movies, probably more by now, but they really put off giving her a live-action movie, considering the fact that she came out in like 1959. Barbie was praised for its script, leading eventually to an Oscar nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay. Critics admired how the film took real-life issues and applied them to the universe of this classic toy. From Galatzine's description, it sounds like Masters of the Universe is trying to achieve something similar. The element of gender roles seems of particular interest in Masters of the Universe. The star mentioned that He-Man is a handshake between what traditional masculinity and femininity are, as a character. Balancing these stereotypes and conventions will allow the film to make an interesting comment on gender roles. I do worry that it's going to get too preachy, and I do think that the Barbie movie was preachy, in my opinion. But also, He-Man, like, they had Teela, who was captain of the Royal Guard, and she was a woman, and that wasn't really, like, ever, specified or brought up. It's just that she was there, and she had this role. And personally, I think that that's a better way to go about it than just being like, there's a woman in the lead combat position? That goes against gender roles. Look at how she's breaking the mold and stuff like that.
You know, Amy, anytime someone calls attention to the breaking of gender roles, it ultimately undermines the concept of gender equality by implying that this is an exception and not the status quo.
And this was back in the 80s, you know, like, they also had Evil Lynn, who was this very powerful sorceress, and she wasn't like the main villain, but she had her own goals and her own convictions. I do think that modern writing kind of gets too hung up on things like, you know, gender roles and politics and stuff. You know, what matters is good storytelling, and I do think that it's more compelling to just, you know, have a female character be competent and strong, just existing, instead of being like, look at how competent and strong she is. You know, like, you don't have to point it out. But that's just my 2 cents on the whole thing. I don't want to make any calls before the movie comes out. You know, we want to wait and see what happens. But the article finishes off by saying, this commentary seems ripe for a character literally named He-Man. While some past depictions have portrayed a conventionally muscular, masculine character, have they? I mean, have you seen Prince Adam? And even He-Man, he's this very, you know, like, yes, he's big and buff and muscular, but he's a lot more than just a punch first, ask questions never kind of character. But I digress. This modernized version of He-Man may challenge that perspective, or at the very least call this into question in terms of how it falls within gender convention. Again, I feel like they don't know He-Man that well. I feel like they're going on stereotypes. Adam and He-Man have always been a pretty well-rounded character. Yes, he's big and strong, but he's also diplomatic and very caring towards people, whether they're civilians or even his own enemies. He's complex, and it just feels like they're boiling him down to just his title, you know, He-Man, and that's a little disappointing in my opinion. Anyway, it finishes off by saying Barbie was a smash success when it hit theaters. As Master of the Universe tries to mimic this success, it will do so with some similar themes as a starting point. Yeah, again, I want to see how it goes. I mean, I'm hoping that it's not as bad as the 1987 movie, but anything's possible. I still think we need to see more. I really hope they don't just like go off of stereotypes. Again, most of He-Man did pretty much come from Filmation, and I just hope that Mattel hasn't lost sight of this character. So yeah, I'm just kind of apprehensive about the whole thing. How do you guys feel about all this? Are you optimistic? Are you pessimistic? How do you feel about Mattel cranking out these toy-based movies? Let me know. I'm definitely interested in hearing everyone's thoughts, and I guess we'll just have to wait for more information to come out. We'll see. So with that, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye for now. Before I go, I want to give a shout out to our members: Tyrant Carnivore, Shiny Orc Boy, Depth Charge Media, Samaru163, Gabby Hime, Verdant Range, JVR, Equestron, Norman Sweet Cream, Way Beyond Coincidence, Hunter Rose, 80s Nostalgia Guy, Felix Spam, J Draws, Meowsers, Sky, Philip, Isaac Martinez, Garcia XV Legend, Tobias Weller, Bandito Bane, Mac B909, Takari the Professor, Omni Fair, J Cavalry, Strider Exile, Phil C, Killer Bomb, Slawa Saporiguez, Entwine Boot 301, Frankie Camarillo, Crimson Phantom, Jin the Goblin, Daunter, G-Rock, Lucas Geist, Papa Hud 69, The Gengar King, Snoopy Von Snoops, Stutania, Spencer Schmidt, ICU Forever, and Chaos Jumper. Thank you all so much for the support, and if you would like to become a member, you can hit the join button next to the subscribe button. We also have Buy Me Coffee if you want to support us that way, and if you enjoyed the video, you can leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and that part's free. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye for now.